meeting of the Goffstown Budget Committee. I'll get started here with a roll call. Skylar is not here. Bill Cordis.
Here and not alone.
Thank you. Greg Flegel.
I'm here and alone. Thank you.
Joe is not here. Eileen is not here. Jeff O'Brien.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Fred Platt. I see Fred there. I'll come back to him once he's done with that call there. Dennis is not here. I am here. I am by myself. Spencer is not here. Richard Manzo.
Here and alone.
Thank you. Richard Fletcher. Should be joining us shortly. Jared. Jared, you're muted.
Still muted, Jared.
Jared Talbot. Can't hear you.
Hit the space bar.
No, I'm using two different systems here.
Great. Heard you there.
I'm here with Bill.
Thank you. And Selectman Lemay.
Here, I'm by myself.
Terrific. Thank you all.
Yes,
Fred.
Did you
yes,
call
sorry,
me
I skipped.
on me?
Yes.
If you didn't, I was on a phone call briefly, so I'm here. And
Yep.
alone.
Thank you, Fred. Scott, do you have the remote meeting language?
Yeah, sure. Consistent with Governor Sununu's Executive Order 2020-04, Emergency Order number 12, the Budget Committee will be attending this meeting remotely. The public can access this remote meeting by either viewing it via a live stream on the Goffstown Television website or by calling into a telephone conference bridge line at 603-766-5646. Then you'll dial, you'll press 685-562#. If you wish to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, please wait for the chair's instruction and then press *9. Your microphone will be unmuted, and you'll be directed to state your name and address prior to making a public comment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Scott. All right, we'll pick up where we left off the other night on page 48, and we'll proceed with the same structure we've been using, and we'll get to the end of the packet here, hopefully pretty quickly. But as always, if you have any questions or comments, do not hesitate. All right, so we'll start on page 48.
Cole, it's Mark.
Yep, go.
Line 1341. There's a $7,500 increase. It's on equipment rental. What are we renting that might be different?
This is Jared. I'm listing this as the print management that we've converted over to. So we're using the vendor for all of our print management services. That is considered the new money. So you should see a reduction in another line. I would estimate to combat the savings.
Okay, thank you, Jared. I'm all set, Cole. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Scott, this is Jeff O'Brien. I just had a question. Considering that this managed print service seems like it's in every school, if I'm correct here, would it make sense to move that really to a district line and remove that out of each individual school, just for curiosity's sake?
We could certainly do that in the future. It's always been at an individual school level. It's not to say that it can't go district, but we could certainly do that, going into the future. We just didn't do it this year.
Yeah, it just seems like it makes sense as like a lot of like the technology services and everything kind of consolidates.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions on 48 here? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to 49.
And you'll see that, Mark, if you look at line 1355, that's where you're seeing that corresponding decrease.
Okay, I got that now. Yep.
Questions on 49?
And I do want to point out, if you look at line 1360, where there's a reduction of $4,000, as well as line 1362, you did see that the district line in terms of software went up quite a bit. What our IT director did was he cut like those two lines, so it kind of moved to that other line. So again, kind of what Jeff, what you were saying, trying to consolidate some of that. Part of what he was trying to do too is that if he can capture licenses in one place, he gets better pricing in some respects when it's the entire district versus, you know, a school here or a school there. But I wanted to at least point that out, that some of that crazy, I think it was like $38,000 increase is being offset in some of these lines.
All right. Questions or comments on 49? Hearing none, we'll move on to 50. I think it's pretty cut and dry here, but any questions on 50? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to 51. Questions or comments on 51 here? All right, hearing and seeing none, move on to 52.
So Cole, this page in particular, 1600, this is your adult education, pretty much mostly night tech classes. It's for students and adults students who might not be successful during the day or might have chosen to have an alternative path for their high school diploma. And again, you have, I'd say, teenagers and adults alike who participate in this. And then there's also some revenues on the adult side. There's revenues that are also supporting that program.
How has that kept up? This is Cole, just for the record. How has that kept up during COVID?
We've seen we're offering much more limited courses. We have some. That program consists of what I would consider more or less core academic classes, more in line with, say, credit recovery for students who may not have passed or failed. They might have failed a class. But it's also for those who might have been out of school for a long time to get their diploma. Then there's also an enrichment piece of it, and many community members have taken classes in things like we've offered classes in financial planning, we've offered classes in like creative welding and art type classes, and those we're offering just a couple of enrichment classes via Zoom, but for the most part, Cole, those have been diminished due to COVID. But overall, the numbers are a little bit lighter this year due to COVID-19, but not so much on the credit recovery side because the students need those to graduate.
Thank you.
Cole, it's Mark. Question?
Yep.
Line 1440, teachers' salaries. 2020 actual was 2,369. We're looking for 26,000. Is that?
Yeah, so that's all COVID related. So what
Okay.
happens is, yeah, we pay teachers per class.
Yep.
And if you're not offering class, like we didn't offer this in the spring. So
Or the summer.
for the summer. So we didn't offer any courses. And then, yeah, so that's kind of the gist of that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Scott and Brian, thank you very much.
Scott, I know you mentioned for the adult ed program, we also receive state grant monies for that.
All right, further questions on 52? All right, hearing none, move on to 53.
I was on mute. Question. I saw some pretty hefty salaries for assistant principals in previous pages and curriculum coordinators. I'm surprised at how light the high school is. Line 1480.
Yeah, because in this particular case, Fred, you're going to see that on when we go a few more pages, it'll be in the 2410 function. This is support services. And I think that back in 2018, there might have been a position, a dean or something like that might have been in that particular line, but almost all of our administrators are in the 2410 lines, and that you'll see that in the next couple of pages.
Thank you.
Questions or comments on 53? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Page 54. Scott, this is Cole, what's the testing increase?
Yeah, that's my notes say that it's an increased cost of advanced placement testing of 1515. So as in that particular line, we pay for PSAT testing for all kids in I think it's 9, 10th, and 11. I'm sorry, 9, 10, and 11. AP testing, and then that what you're seeing there was an increased cost of AP testing in that line.
Is that a function of the testing cost going up or more folks taking it?
Both, from
Great.
what MC.
Right, both. This would be something we call a nice problem to have, that we have more kids taking advanced placement coursework.
Cole, it's Mark.
Yep.
For Brian, is that because more of the colleges are now requesting that to get into the colleges, or is that by choice of the students that are just better preparing themselves?
I think it's more that the students are better preparing themselves. And many years ago, Mark, we noticed that our boys weren't taking as many advanced placement classes as our girls. So our school counselors have really been trying to push the boys more and more. And I think that we're seeing greater enrollments in those classes now than we had seen in the past, and a better distribution by gender.
Thank you, Brian. All set, Cole.
Great. Further questions on 54? Hearing none, we'll move on. 55. Questions or comments on 55? Hearing none, we'll move on. 56.
Mr. Chair, this is Chair
Yep.
Talbot. I have a question for Scott. Just looking at the assistant principal line on 1576, can you articulate how many people fall under?
I believe we have an assistant principal. We have
Curriculum coordinator, dean of students.
Dean of students. So it'd be 3.
So we have 3 people at the high school falling under that assistant principal line?
Yeah.
This is Fred Platt with a follow-on question.
Go, Fred.
I'm concerned. I guess people are hurting. There's COVID. The people are out of work, and this seems, first blush, you had 3 people in that position besides the principal as being top-heavy. Justify it, please.
Well, first of all, Fred, I'd share that it's a high school, a comprehensive high school with 1,100 students. There are a lot of moving parts and complexities. We simply could not run our schools without the administrators that we have. This school is not top heavy. None of our schools are, in fact, are top heavy. Many years ago, people may remember the name Mary Singer. We actually had an additional assistant principal that was cut during budget cuts back in the late, just around 2009, 2010. So the school is not top heavy in any way. These people are absolutely mission critical to supervise well over 100 teachers, as well as support staff, athletics, performing arts, running the budget, dealing with student discipline, because periodically our kids do make some poor choices. And these positions are absolutely invaluable to the running of that school.
And I'm picking on the high school, but I had the same impression going through the elementary schools.
Yeah, same story. So Maple Ave has a principal and an assistant principal. The assistant principal's role is primarily the oversight of special education services. And at Bartlett and Glen Lake, we have a principal in each school. And then those 2 schools actually share an assistant principal between them. And again, same function of the special ed responsibilities. So just in general, Fred, the oversight of special education is a pretty significant administrative burden. And there's an awful lot of oversight and administrative responsibilities to make sure that our programs are run legally compliant and congruent with student needs. So we are not top heavy. We're not staff heavy in Goffstown. And I would remind people at the beginning of our presentations, we listed the per pupil costs that each year the state compiles. It's a state formula where you can compare school district to school district and look at the direct costs. And out of the, I think, 76 or so high schools in the state, I think Goffstown High School is one of the lowest 3 or 4 in a per pupil cost. But despite that, Fred, our achievement is well above the state averages.
Are you good, Fred?
Hello.
Dick is on the line.
Yep. Dick, you have a question?
Dick, just for the minute takers, I didn't see when you popped on, but what time approximately did you join the call?
I just got on, but
Okay.
they're telling me that participation code is not the right code.
Well, you're on.
And I kept dialing
Yeah.
it. Finally comes on.
Okay. So,
I don't know.
All right, so Dick Fletcher joined at for the minute taker at around 7:40 p.m.
It's 7:20.
Okay,
No, it's 7:40.
40, yeah.
Further questions on page 56? Hearing none, we'll move on to 57. Questions on page 57? All right, hearing none. Move on to 58. Couple questions, Scott, on the dues and fees.
Yep.
What's the cause of the increase over the years there?
This was more driven, hold on one second. So that line includes alt ed fees to support field trips, New Hampshire scholars, art workshops. These are entrance fees to support student learning experiences. So that's what the high school requested in those lines. And obviously we didn't have a whole lot of activity due to COVID last year. Most of those things happened in the spring semester in terms of a lot of things that I rattled off to you.
Yeah, field trips towards the end of the year and whatnot.
Yeah, New Hampshire Scholars is an end of year program, art, workshop.
But I think that also includes some of the music and choral performances if students are selected to things like all-state chorus, all-state jazz band, some of those kinds of really nice recognitions.
And some of those are fluid in the sense that some years more students might be involved, well as other years they might not be. It's all based upon the talent level of the kids.
Thank you. Other questions on page 58? All right, hearing none, we'll move on.
Mr. Chair, this is Jared. Looking on line 1638, looking under the maintenance line. Scott, it looks like this is a reduction of a little over $18,000 to bring us more in line with the prior years. Can you articulate what that $18,000 deduction is based on?
Yeah, this was very similar to all the other schools. We had mentioned that we were fortunate enough to hire a maintenance staff person in the district who has significant HVAC abilities. And he is able to do a vast majority of the routine maintenance to our systems rather than hiring a contractor. So in total, obviously Goffstown High School was the largest savings of over 18,000, but in total over all of the district, all the schools within the district, it was a savings of over 40,000 that he's able, and that's only the maintenance piece of what he's been able to do. He's also able to do some repairs, and those we just can't quantify at this point because repairs do fluctuate from year to year, but he can do smaller repairs as well.
I'm glad you brought up repairs, Scott. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to line 1639, which is repairs. It looks like we're budgeted for $46,000, but when I look at the actuals from the prior years, we're more than double that most of the time. Is there really enough money to effectuate the repairs needed that we anticipate for 2022?
According to our facilities director, the answer to that would be yes. There are obviously some things that come up that are more or less, unanticipated. I see your point when you look back at the last 3 years of actuals, but if Randy thought that he should have increased the line, I think he would have. So, sometimes we have to, something breaks. And I give the story, in the SAU building itself, and I was talking to Mark LeMay about it earlier, our boiler had a malfunction. It kind of cast iron piece popped, just blew out due to a faulty pressure relief valve. So, do you budget for some of these things? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. In this case, we didn't anticipate that, and hopefully it'll be a covered insurance claim. But I think in short, Jared, I think Randy would have increased the line if he felt it was needed. And again, if there's anything that happens that is an emergency type of repair, we're going to have to find the money in the budget to do it. And that's probably what we did in years past.
Scott, this is also an example that prior to the establishment of the Capital Reserve Fund, there was a lot more volatility in lines like this, but having that Capital Reserve Fund and having the support of the community to make deposits into that, we've been able to be a lot more strategic about some of those purchases.
We're also hoping that, if we do a better job in our maintenance lines, then hopefully these repairs will be not as significant because we're paying closer to attention to things. So can't always predict when things are going to fail, but having that Capital Reserve Fund is a help in that respect.
Scott, would the stairs and tiles have been under that line?
The tiles were. The stairs were not, because the stairs were done this year. So we just paid that bill. So they wouldn't be in the 2020 actuals.
So, Mr. Chair, this is Jared again. I think it's important to just reinforce that the CIP is really instrumental to ensure that we don't inflate our repair line retroactively. So being proactive with our replacements using the CRF, as Mr. Bulkey, Superintendent Bulkey listed, I think is paramount so that we don't be reactive and have to spend the money in a repair line.
I agree. Further questions or comments on 59 here? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. 60. Things there.
I did want to point out, just for the budget committee, school board already knows this, but the bond for the high school in 2022, that will be the last year. So you have a $555,000 payment of principal, and then you have a little over $12,000 of interest. And after that, that bond will be retired.
Perfect. Questions there? All right, anything folks want to go back to in here that maybe you made a note of, or you're thinking about? I'll give folks a little while to flip through here in case there's anything.
Mr. Chair, this is Jared. While people are flipping been through and looking at some of the things that we've discussed. I would like to also just ask that we have a future meeting to discuss CIP and what the school board will be bringing for a CRF refund or replenishment. So I do want to make sure that we put something on the calendar to talk about that. I've asked Mr. Bulkey and our chair to discuss those things in our next school board meeting on Monday. And hopefully after that meeting, we will have some additional information we can bring to this board.
Great. I'm sorry, Jared. Future meeting for the CRF, and what was the other thing you mentioned?
In reviewing the CIP, I believe that was something that we've done every year at the budget committee.
Yeah.
We'd want to probably do that as well.
I think that went out to folks this week, but and then has the school board, where have we ended up? I know there's the capital reserve fund. Are there any other discussions going on besides the one that we've established recently? I'm not sure if it was 2 years ago now or.
No, the two remaining items that I know of that we would want to bring forward is the replenishment of the CRF with another injection of money. And there would not be any contracts that I'm aware of that would come up to vote for the population. But Mr. Bulkey, is there anything else that we'd want to bring to this board?
No, I appreciate that, Jared. No contracts this year. The only other thing that, and Jared can speak to this a little more, the board had discussed when Mr. Gross shared the information about the last bond payment occurring on the 2001 addition at Goffstown High School. The expiration of that bond has given the school board some consideration to think about future planning. The budget committee may remember that prior to COVID, we had a very active building committee that had been meeting to evaluate space needs and to look into the future needs of the Goffstown School District. The only thing I'd add to Mr. Talbot's remarks is the board did discuss the possibility of changing an existing capital reserve fund that we still have on the books that's exclusively geared towards Bartlett Elementary School. Jared, I'm not sure that we got very far, but there was at least a preliminary conversation about the prospect of changing the scope of that capital reserve fund to include all the schools and not just Bartlett. So that would be potential language change for an existing capital reserve fund to have a slightly larger scope. But I would defer to Mr. Talbot because at this point the board has not taken any action on that.
Yeah, on that specific item, again, as Superintendent Bulkey listed, we have not had any kind of really vote on change of scope. And I'm not sure if a change of scope for an existing capital reserve fund would have to come to the budget committee. I do not believe that we would be looking to inject any money into that fund for this fiscal cycle. So I'm not sure if it would actually have to come to this board, but that's something that we will need to figure out, Mr. Chair. And if we do need to bring it to this board, we will of course do that appropriately.
Great. Look forward to seeing what happens with those conversations on the school board side.
I believe it would take a vote of the legislative body to change the scope.
Yes. Yes.
We would agree, Fred.
All right. Anything?
Brian,
Oh, yep. Jeff.
You know, I remember a lot of heated discussions around the institution of the Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a separate fund that is just for Bartlett that I'm just finding out about now?
There's an old account from many, many years ago. And I can't remember, Scott, maybe I want to say it's I think around $5,000 that has been retained in that fund, but that fund has not been used. In the last project we did at Bartlett when that fund was used was when we did the addition off the front, which included the new entrance and kind of the main office. So it's been many years that fund has sat stagnant. And the conversation, Jeff, was the board had talked about potentially changing the scope of that. And I would agree with Mr. Plett that that would require a vote of the legislative body.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the dollar amounts, I believe it's over $7,500. Richard Manzo is a trustee. I used to be a trustee. I'm still an alternate, but it's held in the New Hampshire Public Deposit Fund, and a little over $7,000 or $7,500 is in there right now. And this thing is probably a decade or more old at this point.
Would it make sense to consolidate all the capital reserves funds under one, such as the one that was voted upon by the voters? What was that, about a year and a half, 2 years ago?
One of the challenges, I think, Jeff, is this is Scott Gross, is the capital reserve fund that was established a couple of years ago was for existing capital assets. So if you wanted to create a capital reserve fund for future something new, you couldn't tap into it. So let's say, for an example, that you wanted to put an addition onto the theater for storage purposes, and it's going to be you could not use that fund that was created a couple of years ago for that purpose because it's not an existing capital asset. It would be a new one. So that's where you'd be hamstrung if you just consolidated all of them into that one. You'd almost would have to have a much more broader scope a CRF if you wanted to do that.
It's been several years since I served on the Capital Improvement Committee, and I miss it dearly, but it conflicts with some other stuff I have going on. But I remember at the time the Capital Improvement Committee was very reluctant to pass anything that was broad-based, rather than having a specific scope in mind. And I don't know if that is still prevailing, that thought. So I don't want, the time, the Capital Improvement Committee did not want raising so much money per year for any school purpose, but rather a specific purpose.
Yeah, that topic was brought up quite a bit during the institution of the Capital Reserve Fund most recently, having something that was a lot more targeted towards something such as existing projects, as Scott mentioned, as opposed to something that was very broad brushed.
All right. Anything else in the budget that folks are curious about? We will have to take up the CRF and CIP at a future meeting. I'll work with Derek on scheduling that. Derek and Scott, scheduling that out, and when that makes the most sense to take up. But once again,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Cole, we did have scheduled tentatively next Thursday. So that's something that the school board will then have made their decision on Monday. So if you want to do it then, or if you want to try to attach it to a town one, because I don't know how long it would take. That's your prerogative.
Yeah, I think also I'm worried about attendance at this point.
Right.
So would like to be able to touch base with members and see what works best for getting folks here going forward, because it's been more of an issue.
Mr. Chair, would it be your assessment that we would be on the particular school side that we complete by Thanksgiving? Or do you think we're going to need another meeting beyond that?
No, I think we should be able to be wrapped by then. I don't think we should have to go into December. I'm not sure when our last meetings were last cycle, but
it was right around that time. But I think I think on our side, on the school side, I think we were able to take advantage of Thursdays, and there was election day in the town, that plus the town had issues with getting the valuation and just some of the budgets put together. So I think we were, in terms of the school side, I think we were about 2 weeks ahead of the town, and we kind of knew that. I mean, if you remember talking with Derek, we kind of knew that was going to be the case, that we would be probably wrapped up before them.
Yeah. Great. All right. If there's nothing else with the budget, Scott, I'm not. Are you looking for a tentative motion or?
I move to adjourn.
Well, I think my question is that at some point, the budget committee needs to move a budget to public hearing. That's the motion, and with an amount of money. And that was my question for the chair, is that, at what point does the budget committee feel comfortable making that motion? And then from there, I know that I've historically worked with Jeff and Cole in the past in terms of working on a PowerPoint and doing all of those things so that we would present it to the public. So that was my question. Knowing full well that the capital reserve fund discussion is going to be separate and distinct.
Has the school board reviewed the budget entirely and done it?
Yeah.
Yes, this is Jared. The school board reviewed this budget before it was actually sent to the budget committee. So we made a motion and approval to move this budget to the budget committee for review, and then approval that would then go into public session.
Personally, I would hope that we could wait until we have the CRF discussion and then hopefully make a vote on both of those at the same time. I know there's some members here who have been involved in discussions so far who aren't here this evening, and I think I'd like to hear from them before we would move the budget to public hearing. But so far, I'm tracking, we made a $20,000 cut, and then we cut some nominal $1 lines. That's it so far?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I made a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, but just before there's a second, I would appreciate it to summarize. We'll have one more meeting on the school side that will either be next Thursday, or if it makes more sense for folks on a Tuesday and it works out better, we'll make that happen. And that might not necessarily be next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. But would like to wrap up the school side as soon as possible with as many members as possible. So without further ado, are there any questions before we adjourn tentatively? All right. Is there a second to Fred's motion?
This is Jared. I will second that.
Great. Second from Jared. I'll call the roll. Motion to adjourn. Skylar is not here. Bill Cordis.
Yes.
Greg Flegel.
Yes.
Joe is not here. Eileen is not here. Jeff.
Yes.
Fred Platt.
Yes.
Dennis is not here. I vote yes. Spencer is not here. Richard Manzo.
Yes.
Dick Fletcher.
Yes.
Thank you. Jared.
Yes.
Selectman Lemay.
Yes, sir.
All right. We are adjourned.